I'll be her dessert.
Dylan, get over yourself.
Once again, yes, the hair is messy, just ignore it. Recently, I have noticed, as has anybody else, that there's a lot of cancellations going on recently in terms of shows and whatever. It's always going on. And I think that companies need to really rethink their strategy, because I think that a lot of the time right now, from my perspective, it seems like they are not actually doing what they used to do to promote their shows. They don't do nearly as much to create buzz around it. And I think that that's mostly why so many of those shows are failing. Let's talk about how they even determine who gets cut, who gets to have another season, and whatnot. This information is mostly sealed. Obviously, we can decide based on interest, viewership, return of investment, that kind of stuff, you know. However, for example, Netflix, which is one of those platforms that we talk about most when it comes to cancellations and whatever, because honestly, they just greenlit so many shows and so many things that they shouldn't have, while passing on a lot of things that they should have picked up. A lot of people are confused recently because a lot of shows that actually did well in terms of public interest are being cancelled. Fate the Winx Saga, I've already made a video about them, a deep dive, and talked about them at length. But also recently, Gossip Girl, the reboot, got canned as well. I mean, I was kind of expecting that because they were on HBO Max, and HBO Max it just keeps on canceling shows. I wonder if they're just gonna fucking cancel everything that they produce at this point. It is a shame that a lot of shows are getting canned, those ones that were really doing well. Like, for example, Close Enough. I personally didn't hear about it for a while, but I saw a bunch of clips online and out of context videos, and I decided to watch the show, and I really loved it. And I think that honestly, based on the views of those clips and of compilations from that show, this show is definitely garnering a lot of attention from just general public. I haven't been seeing a lot of promotional stuff, so it seems like a lot of the decisions here are just an unfortunate accidental kind of situation. And I think that, for example, with Inside Job, it's a little strange. The reason why I actually even wanted to talk about this at all is because we started to see a lot of things that are kind of strange for this industry. So for example, with Inside Job, it's not strange to cancel a show, but it is strange to renew it almost immediately for a second season because the show was doing so well when it just got released, and then take it back.
Who do you think killed Spencer?
What? That's rare. I'm not saying that it never happened, but it's rare when you get greenlit for another season, and like that's an official announcement, everything is already out there in the open, in the public, you know, and then all of a sudden they just pull the plug. That's fucking weird as shit. Like, it is. Why would you even release that information if you weren't sure about renewing for another season? It begs the question, like, if they are in the top 10, at least in some countries, and in the countries that have high populations, so for example the US, right? If it's in the top 10, then why wouldn't it be renewed, right? So people started to kind of suspect that with the minimal information that we do have of the self-reported numbers, because that's important, that we don't really often see what the true numbers are because it's not like public knowledge per se. It's more self-reported by the companies, you know, so whatever number they tell us, we kind of just run with it, right? So if they're saying that this show has garnered this amount of hours watched, then we believe them, obviously. So if we go by those numbers, it doesn't quite make sense why a lot of the shows that did get cancelled this year got cancelled. Fate the Winx Saga, I think that I was kind of expecting that they're gonna get cancelled not because of the numbers of like who watched the show, but like because of like the size of the fandom online, because of how little conversation they garnered for the second season in general. And it's really strange that they didn't get anyone talking about season 2 the way that everybody was talking about it when season 1 came out, because everyone was so disappointed about the first season that no one gave a fuck to make another video about it, because this is very important. And it's really interesting that companies don't use coverage online from like YouTube and whatever, or even TikTok, you know, to talk about their movies, their shows and whatnot, because conversation is what drives the shows to stick around, especially now where we have binging, where people just consume the show so quickly that it gets spat out like within a week and everyone forgets about it, right? So now people are thinking that the pure numbers of like how many hours were watched is not what's driving the decisions now at the headquarters of Netflix or any other platform, right? So now people are speculating that it is actually the completion rate. How many people actually finish this show, okay? So, for example, a lot of people were interested in this show because of the buzz that was around it. So they opened the first episode, they started watching it, and then they kind of lost interest and they never continued. So you would have like 100% rate at the beginning, right? So like all the people who tuned in. And then on the second episode, for example, you already have only 50% of people participating. Now, this is kind of the metric that a lot of people were using. I think that in the past 2 years, at least in the public, that's what people thought those companies were using. Now it's becoming a little bit muddy again because it doesn't seem to make any sense that some shows got canceled before there was even enough time for any statistics to be kind of reliable enough to make decisions based on them. So for example, a lot of shows, they got canceled right after they got released, like maybe a week later, maybe 2 weeks later, which is really strange, especially when you're not releasing something that is based on shock value or mystery show, because those two genres are the only ones that you're gonna get really high binge rates, you know, people watching it really quickly within 2 weeks, for example, right? It is really unreliable to think that this statistic is in any way gonna be reliable when you talk about shows that target adults, okay? What the fuck do you think is gonna happen if you, like, starting from 18 years old, like, not even 18, god, like 16 years old, everyone is very busy. Like, even though people are like 16 or whatever, they have so much studying to do. You just rarely get that kind of numbers unless you release a show that's targeting teenagers or young adults and you release it at a time where a lot of people are on a holiday or off school, you know? In any other circumstance, it's a really weird metric to use, and I just don't understand why they would be doing that. And especially, it is a very bad metric to use if you're trying to make anything that's gonna have any type of longevity. And you need something that's gonna have longevity if you're going to be hoping to make a lot of money off of a show. Because watching a show on Netflix without the ads, without any of that, right? It's not really making that much money for them, like one view or whatever, right? So there's a lot of reliance on building a brand. That's what it usually is, what it usually comes down to when it comes to entertainment industries. Musicians don't really make that much money off of just their music. They usually have to tour or they have to have merch, you know? And if you don't have a strong show that can keep people interested over a long period of time, you're not fucking selling shit. No one's gonna buy something that they watched within 2 days, like a year ago, and forgot about. That's not gonna happen. So it's a really strange way to approach that. It's just not that's just not smart. I really don't know how they're doing it exactly, but based on their decisions recently, I just don't think that they're understanding why their shows don't have longevity that is required to make money off of them. Another thing that I wanted to mention and talk about was, of course, the cancellation of Gossip Girl, because a lot of people like the second season more than the first one. But the problem here is, again, quite obvious, I would say. The show is not compelling enough because of the characters not having the it factor. And I'm not trying to say that it factor is some kind of ephemeral thing. I don't think that it is. I think that it's mostly just good marketing, really, and luck. To get that, like, you don't even need someone super talented or someone super charismatic. They just need a little bit of charisma and a little bit of talent, maybe just a smidge. Honestly, just a smidge, so they can carry a conversation when they're having an interview or whatever and seem kind of likable, and you can make whatever you want with them. What's strange nowadays is that they don't make their own stars anymore, okay? So like what I wrote down was not enough star power in this show. And it's not because they don't have big stars participating in their show, it's because they're not making stars out of them. Gossip Girl, the original Gossip Girl, it really made Blair and Serena feel like it girls, and maybe you weren't like, I wasn't feeling like there were celebrities in the show because I constantly kept on forgetting that Serena is. I think that outside of that, their photo shoots that they've done were very iconic. The promotional posters were very iconic. The show was definitely funny, and that's what's missing from the new reboot, is that it's it started to like try and be funny at the very end of season 1 and in season 2, but it needs to be more. And a lot of their acting really feels like people who are trying to act. Like it feels like it's very unnatural to them to be like this. Like, for example, Blair is a ridiculous character in terms of like just her being so over the top with her scheming and other things like that, but at the same time all of her motivations were always not justified, but that they made sense, you know, for the character and everything. A lot of the characters had a lot of chemistry. The characters in this show, in the reboot, don't have that.
Your hands off of me! Are you trying to kill me too? A guy died and you use it as part of a game. Who does that? You crossed the line! And so did you when you brought up Pete! Shut up! You shut up!
I didn't know what Jessica was gonna do. How could I?
Because anything you try to do always fucks up, Julian.
You're blaming me.
Yeah. You're never the one to take the blame. Do you ever stop for a second and think what the common denominator is when something malfunctions? It's you.
That's not fucking fair.
Maybe it's not, but it's true.
It doesn't entertain you. I kind of have to talk myself into liking what I'm seeing on the screen. You know, I was looking at the numbers of what the cast is kind of pulling online, you know, YouTube search Gossip Girl reboot and, you know, like 2022 or whatever, the actors interview, they don't pull that many views even all together. This is not good. It's just not. I think that they should have gotten a couple of them who are really good friends outside of the show, have them do some interviews or whatever, or a couple of people who play off of each other well. But again, they don't have them. Did they not cast them together? Did they not test the chemistry between them? Like, I don't understand. I honestly, like, I think about it all the time because I got a comment recently on one of the Gossip Girl videos with people being like, oh, it's just because the cast is not hot enough. No, they're all hot. That's not the problem, really. It's not even the show's fault as much as it's the fault of those people who are running these production companies nowadays, because they just think that things are supposed to blow up because they made them and because they have a good enough premise and because they have a few people who are known by the public. But it's not enough, because star power is not good enough nowadays, because there's so many people who are micro celebrities that it's just not special. It's not special, girl. Like, you either need to keep on reintroducing something interesting about them, or you need to make them into an it girl somehow, and it's all possible because you have money and time and connections. That's how all the other it girls were made. It wasn't because they were so exceptional, it's because they were in the right place at the right time, with a lot of people putting them in the right places at the right time, in the right outfits, with the right people around. It's genuinely just manufactured bullshit, and you should have manufactured it if you wanted it to stay on air and have a big budget. I think that the actor who plays Max, a lot of people were saying that, you know, like, he's old or whatever because like, he doesn't look like a teenager, which is fair enough, but none of them do. I think that they should have, first of all, just done this show in university. Once again, stop doing this 16-year-old bullshit. Like, nobody wants to see 16-year-old teenagers fuck. Like, just do something else. You don't need that much to get the ball rolling when you are such a big company with so many connections at this. Like, it's just, you don't need that much. And one of the things that was really funny to me when I was researching Fate, I forgot to talk about it, but instead of doing like proper interesting, emphasis on the word fucking interesting, PR and some press junkets or something like that are interesting, they decided to do like a Netflix after show or whatever. I'm gonna look up later what it's been called, but it's like an hour-long show that's kind of like their version of a late night show interview with their own like cast of people who are kind of leading this Netflix-based show, right? They had skits in it and they were very like basic, obviously, just like people talking at the beginning or whatever, and it was so unfunny. Like, those skits were just cringe as hell. I was just sitting there like, oh, holy shit.
Girlfriend, stop! Get back in the car!
What the fuck is going on this day, honestly? The worst part of it all was the fact that this is the most official interview and the most trying to make it fun type of interview that I've seen for Fate. Do they not understand how this works anymore? Like, are they not keeping up? Are they not doing the research? What is going on, honestly? It is, of course, partially because of the fact that people don't give a flying fuck about celebrities. But even then, it's still possible to make people talk about them. I'm just curious as to why the companies are not promoting as they used to. They don't do the job that they're supposed to do to make the show successful outside of what the show actually is in terms of the episodes. So it's really interesting that they're just not doing it, and then they're surprised that they are not garnering attention and they're not keeping the attention. Like, you gotta be kidding me, honestly. Anyway, see you soon. Bye.
Bye.